This agency is the executive agent for all treaties and agreements this nation has that has a verification regime.
The reason you have arms control treaties, first of all, there has to be something in it for each government that signs up to the treaty. INF, Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, was negotiated between the United States and the Soviet Union. Soviet Union collapsed right as the INF was coming into force, so there were still missiles in a variety of countries in the former Soviet Union. So we had Russians for the first time ever, shortly after the Cold War, arriving on U.S. soil to inspect what had been classified facilities before. At the same time, we had teams of 10 Americans going all over the former Soviet Union where their missiles were, and then because that treaty had an elimination process, we then got to watch every time they destroyed one of their missiles, and they got to come to the States and watch us every time we destroyed one of ours.
We got started in that business in the INF when President Reagan signed the INF treaty in Reykjavik. And since then, it has grown over time. We manage and execute both the offensive missions in our partner countries, and we provide the escort and monitoring for foreign inspection teams that are looking at U.S. assets, whether it's in the United States or overseas.
I can remember early on in the INF and the original START treaty, they were a little bit antagonistic. They were a little bit, we don't trust you, you don't trust us. But at the same time, they were all soldiers, sailors, airmen, as were we.
The START treaty itself was well over 1,000 pages. The New START treaty is considerably shorter, but there's some differences of opinion on exactly how things should be conducted.
We've got a treaty that's this thick, that was negotiated by a bunch of lawyers and a bunch of diplomats sitting around a table in Geneva over the course of 5 or 6 months. Okay, we're now standing in Siberia in a blizzard, and he's going through his Russian version of it, and I'm going through my English version, because I know I've read in here I have a treaty right to do what I've said I want to do, and I find it, and I show it to him. But he finds another part of the treaty that tends to contradict that. Meanwhile, it's snowing heavier, the print's starting to run in our treaties. It's 20 below. You get the picture. So you gotta build a bond with this guy almost. A lot of times it was like, let's hold off on that argument, let's take a break, let's go to lunch, and we can discuss it where actually there might be some heat or something.
I think we were able to build a program that was built upon respect. We understood that they had red lines. They understood that we had red lines, and we found a way to work together to eliminate these weapons that we both committed to eliminate under various arms control treaties.
We were working in Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Ukraine in reducing their SSBNs, their heavy bombers, their ICBMs, and their infrastructure that supported those. And we either eliminated them through our own destructive means, or they were moved back to Russia where it came under their counting rules there under the START and now the New START Treaty. Over 8,000 strategic nuclear weapons are no longer pointed at us through the efforts of this agency and our partners around the world. That's significant.
The men and women that we have that do this stuff are professional from the moment they get off the airplane in country until the moment they get back onto the airplane and get to come home.
If you walk down the hall to our on-site inspection office spaces, in the foyer is a big sign that says, "Trust but verify." That is the mantra for their organization.
There was an Army Russian FAO named Nick Nicholson who was shot and killed by Soviet guards in what was then East Germany in the mid-'80s. And a couple of different buildings on different Army bases named after Nick. When I was in on-site inspection agency the first time in the mid-'90s, I served with 2 officers who knew Nick very, very well. And anytime the Russians came through here and did an inspection for cultural time, they always started off at Arlington National Cemetery at Nick's grave. And they would tell the story about how Nick was shot by Soviet sentries. And it wasn't just, look what you did to him, it was, Nick was there looking at a newer tank that the Russians had stationed there. And he was part of a mission that was allowed to travel around East Germany, but he probably shouldn't have been where he was when he got shot. Now, in a kinder, gentler time, we have treaty verification and arms control agreements that allow us to go in and look at a newer type of tank and see what it is that Nick was trying to do without any danger to ourselves. And there's the reciprocity that they get to come and look at our stuff too. So it wasn't just a history lesson and a poke in the eye that you killed my buddy Nick. It was more of a look how far we've gone between our two nations, between our militaries, that we can do things like this.